Hey,
Hey, Katie, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, okay. Because I was saying, I was like hitting the audio and then it wouldn't work, but then I guess I had to hit okay on whatever the little message was. Okay.
Do you want to stop recording real quick?
Just hit pause.
Yeah, pause recording.
There's a couple people coming in right now.
I can keep an eye on the wait list while you
Okay.
get it started.
Alrighty, sounds good.
Okay.
Alrighty. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. My name is Renata. I am a third year medical student in Ross, and I would like to welcome you all to our AAEM, Women in Emergency Medicine, IMG webinar series. With tonight's topic being how to perfect your ERAS application. Like I said, my name is Renata. I'm going to have my co-host, Kristen, introduce herself, and then we'll have our panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll jump into questions. And if you guys have any questions as we're going throughout our meeting tonight, you can always pop them in the chat, and we'll, of course, ask our panelists whether it's throughout the meeting or at the end. So, Kristen, you can go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kristen. I'm an MS4 applying this cycle in emergency medicine. I go to AUC, and I'm really excited to have you guys all here for our webinar. So we can start by introducing the first panelist.
Dr. Gordon, you can go ahead if you'd like. It doesn't matter who goes first. You can go first if you'd like.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Sanjay Gordon. So I went to AUA medical school, and now I'm an intern in emergency medicine at Newlands Health in New York. Yeah, I'm happy to be here to talk with you guys. I feel like I was just in you guys' shoes a few months ago, actually. So whatever questions you guys have, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you.
I guess I'll go next. I'm Hayden Tomlinson. I went to Ross. I am currently at PGY1 at Thomas Jefferson in Philadelphia. So happy to answer any questions. I went to a few kind of seminars like this last year as I was doing my residency application process, and I found them very helpful. So if you guys have any questions on the process or anything related to it, just let me know. Happy to help.
And I see Dr. Kanji on here. Can you introduce yourself?
Okay, sorry, I'm trying to make this thing work. I am Melina Kanji. I am currently a second year, just became a second year at Northeast Georgia Medical Center in Gainesville, Georgia. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. It's a really exciting time and also really nerve-wracking time. So I'm here for any questions you might have.
Alrighty, I think that's probably
Yep,
it.
that's it.
Okay, that's it for now. Alrighty, so I'm going to jump into the first question, which will be, okay, so we've heard that the hobby section has returned on the ERAS application. So what is your advice on navigating this section? Should people keep the hobby section, strictly medicine related, or is it okay to include things outside of medicine? And anyone can go first, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, so I think I'll answer that one. So I would say, because your application is going to have everything medicine related, all the achievements that you've achieved over the years, different things that you've done throughout medicine, whether it be volunteer work and stuff like that. I think the hobby section is a good area to show program directors that you're not just this person that goes to medical school, who are you outside of medical school? Who are you outside of medicine? And I think a lot of program directors want to see that because they want diversity in their programs. That's one of the things that they look for. I know my current program director, that's something that he told me just the other day too, is like when he's choosing, he's looking for applicants that are not just defined by their scores or just defined by the grades or whatever it is, but they want people that are well-rounded and can actually get along with not just the patients, but with the faculty and their co-residents. So I think that area, the hobby section, is something that I would, definitely, if you don't have the hobbies, I would say definitely mix it up. Don't just leave it blank. But for sure, like I'm sure we all have some things that we like doing, whether it be some people like going for bike rides and like hiking, like put that stuff there, just to show who you are outside of medicine.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I would, if we didn't have hobbies last year to put in our applications, but I think I would probably just exclusively put like hobbies outside of medicine in that section and just try to fill out as much as you can with like, that's like actual hobbies you actually do. Don't make anything up, but just put something out there that makes you seem like you have a life outside of medicine, and especially emergency medicine, such a big thing to like kind of be a well-rounded person, and it's a lot about personality, not just like do you know your medicine? Do you know like XYZ? It's a lot of like, do you have a good personality? Who do I want to be on shift with at 2 a.m. when crap's hitting the fan? So I think it's very important to kind of work on that part of the application, make sure it's thorough, make sure you put some stuff there. Because I guarantee you they'll ask about it. I think in almost every interview I had, they asked me, what do I do for fun? What do I do outside of the hospital? So it's definitely going to come up. So make sure you're able to talk about it if you put it in there as well.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, it's important for them to know that we're not just about medicine, that we have a life outside of medicine. Thank you guys for that.
I wanted to add something really quick. Actually, at every single one of my interviews, they asked about the hobbies that I wrote on there. And actually, like the program I ended up at, like I feel like he pretty much 90%, we talked about that on my interview. And it's big thing in EM is like, are you going to pass the 2 a.m. test? Like he was like, Hayden was saying, like it's more about that than some of the other stuff. Everything else they can read on paper. They see your slows, so they kind of know what other people see about you, like education wise, and like but what you do for fun, like they actually started trying to like connect me with people. They're like, oh, you like yoga? Like this attending loves yoga. Like this is so it's a really big part of it. So let your personality shine through this. That's huge. Sorry, I just want to add that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, we can move to our next question now. We wanted to know how many organizational commitments should we include in our ERAS application, and what do you guys consider to be an acceptable amount? What's too much? What's not enough? Should we at least have one thing on there? So like, for example, AAEM or SAEM, there's other, organizations such as that. What are your feedback or thoughts on including that in the ERAS application?
I think you should probably include some of the big ones. It's a very small section, I feel like. So I think I listed like 3 or 4 that I was generally part of, with like the ones that I'm more active in towards the top. And then, but I was never asked about any of that, to be honest, during my interviews. So I wouldn't go like crazy excessive, because then you look kind of like a gunner, and they'll probably be like, are you really doing anything with these 10 groups? So that'd probably be my only little bit of advice. But other than that,
yeah, that's good advice. Thanks.
Yeah, I would definitely say include. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so I would definitely try to include some like organizations that if they're relevant to emergency medicine, like SAEM, all of that, that's great to definitely have on there. It shows you're committed to the specialty. You've been like doing work within an organization that's related to emergency medicine. So I think that's definitely should go in the application for sure. Other organizations that you might be in at your school, like a clinical emergency medicine group, anything that you've done with leadership, I think that's very important to include in there as well. So I would definitely try to add whatever you can to there, but again, yeah, I wouldn't go overboard if it's not like super relevant or you didn't really commit much time to it. Can't really speak about it if you're asked about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, if you're part of those organizations, definitely put it there. But from my experience, it was never something that necessarily came up throughout my interviews. I think it's more for just showing that you are involved in EM organizations, which I mean, if everyone should be if you're planning on going into EM, but I don't think it's something that is looked at that closely.
Okay. That's definitely good to know.
Awesome. Thank you. So you guys are saying get involved, but don't go overboard. It's okay to do a little bit, not a lot. Okay. So for our next question, it has to do with letters of recommendation. So if students get letters of recs outside of EM, who should they assign those to as far as like what specialty? Example, if they get a letter from an IM physician, should it be, labeled or flagged as IM, or should it just go under EM since it is an EM application? How do students navigate that portion?
So for the so I would say, so if you are gonna have for example, I am program director write you a letter, what you can do is tell that program director that, hey, I'm applying for emergency medicine, and ask them to write you a letter, based on that. And then when you upload, because I believe there's a maximum of 4 LORs that you can use. So you're gonna have your slows, hopefully. You're gonna have your slows. And then if you want to make up for, so let's say you have 2 slows, and then you have like or E slow, and then you do like a O slow, which is the off service rotation. I would just reach out to that program director to let them know that you're applying for emergency medicine and get them to write that letter, kind of directed towards emergency medicine versus saying that you'd be a good internist or something like that. So just ask them to be specific. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I would just say, like in general, ideally, you want to have at least 2 letters from emergency medicine faculty, ideally at a program that has like a residency. And then I think it's fine to have like a third and fourth letter from someone else that you rotated with that's not necessarily emergency medicine, but can speak highly to your skills and your character and give you like a good, strong letter of recommendation. And then on that note as well, if you haven't already, I hope you are getting your letters of recommendation kind of set in stone now. Don't be like me and wait until the last minute. And ERAS had already opened up when I got my 3rd letter. It was stressful. So start working on that now. You can get it like uploaded to ERAS already, I believe. Just have it there ready to go at the application or like it actually starts.
And did you say you had 3 total?
Yeah, so I had 2 slows and then 1 letter of recommendation from my pediatrics core attending.
Okay.
So yeah, so I had 2 slows and then 1 LOR from an ER faculty, but it wasn't like a slow, it was just a regular letter. But so I'm from Chicago, and a lot of my interviews were in nearby, like Michigan, for example. Like I got a lot from there. And I think, and actually I was brought up at some of my interviews that that LOR I got was from a faculty member at like a hospital that I rotated at. I did an audition rotation at in Michigan, and like everybody knew this guy like across Michigan. And so I was getting interviews from like places that may or usually don't take IMGs because they were like, well, if this guy's saying this about you, like we trust him. So strong letters are, I think, everything with an EM. And so let's say you're applying to IMG, which I did not do, but like if you did, you wouldn't want to give a letter that somebody's gearing towards internal med for you, like put it with your EM application, because it's not a strong who you are with EM, and that's the most important thing. So I would say even more so, go ask that person for maybe even like a tweak letter where they mention specifically like, since I've known them, like in this pediatric rotation, they've been wanting to do EM, and this is why, what the, you know, the things that I see that they work well with children, and so that would be great. You know, they work well in fast-paced, whatever. But like have them gear it towards EM. Like that is the biggest thing. So even if you have lower letters, because actually only one of my slows was like a real slow. The other one was at my home institution, but like they didn't have a residency. So technically, I think that's an O slow, but I don't know all those technical things. But it was a slow. I just don't think it was like the, you know, real one that's only if you're at have a residency program in there. So I didn't have that many letters, but it's the quality over the quantity.
Okay, thank you.
Really quick before Kristen continues, we have Dr. Pappas that joined us a little bit late. Dr.
Please just call me Vivian. I can't. I like already have PTSD from the hospital every day.
Oh gosh, you're okay. You're okay.
Viv. Yeah, sorry guys. I'm late. I'm currently on call. We do 24-hour call on our off-service rotations, so I am on call.
It's no worries. You can introduce yourself, and if you caught that last question and you'd like to chime in, go right ahead.
Sure.
If not, then we'll continue.
My name is Vivian. I am a PGY1 at Northwell, so North Shore University Hospital / LIJ. It's a mix of Queens and Long Island. We cover 2 hospitals. Level 1 trauma center. I went to SGU, so understand the struggle. The last question was about letters. I feel like if anyone wants encouragement about the cycle, the fact that I got through the cycle with like no dedicated period and late letters and a late step 2 should be a sigh of relief, I think, for everyone. I'm not recommending it, but like stuff ends up, I think there's a lot of chatter on school forums, on like Twitter, wherever, where everyone's like gassing themselves up and there's a crazy timeline for everything. I think as long as you just act like a human being in emergency medicine and are genuine, you end up going far. I had 2 EM slows, both of them were late because my school didn't let me, I essentially like couldn't have a dedicated. So my course finished September 22nd. I took step right before that in my last core and then ended up applying. And long story short, I did my 2 EM electives after that. I matched at a program that's like not IMG friendly. They don't really take IMGs. So I think people are willing to see past it. I actually think if you have any late letters coming in, it's kind of it could be a plus because it lets you reach out to programs and just be like, hey, you know what? I actually just uploaded a letter. I'm really interested in your program. These are the reasons why. Like, don't use some cookie cutter template. Actually be genuine and like what attracts you to that program, and then see if it offers a connection. Whereas when you don't have a letter, like you're kind of just begging for an interview. So I think it does offer some sort of ability to reach out. And then I had 2 slows, 1 off slow, and then 1 letter from someone I did research with. I agree with whoever was saying before that getting like at least 1 letter where even if you break the OSLO template, but it really speaks on your personality and maybe some of your personality traits, and they're longer letters than the like 400 character maximum of slows, at least have 1 of those. And if you can add some things in yourself when you write those letters, do it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's very refreshing to hear. Absolutely. So it seems like having 2 slows and a strong letter of recommendation is enough, essentially. Awesome.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that I think slows and EM are the one thing that are consistently talked about and like referenced in your application. So just try to get a good slow.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. We were interested to know how many programs in total did you guys apply to? And how many in general should an IMG apply to?
I applied to a lot of programs. I think it depends on the cycle. I think we're probably on the tail end of EM not being as competitive as like it was 2 or 3 cycles ago. I say apply broadly unless it's a place that you know you'll not be happy in at all. Like if you're not going to be happy in Montana, don't apply to Montana programs. But if you could see yourself somewhat being happy in whatever state it is, even if it's a little bit outside of your comfort zone, I say just go for it. And then when interviews start coming in, it just offers some like sigh of relief. I think I interviewed a lot more than I should have. I think a lot of us did last cycle with Zoom interviews. But it's kind of the name of the game. And I think as you go along the cycle, you'll feel out how it's going and then make adjustments from there.
Okay, so a number between like 50 and 100?
Of programs applied
Like
to, I
a-
applied to over,
A safe number in general?
I applied to over 100 programs. I interviewed at like 42, ranked 17.
Okay, thank you for sharing.
No worries.
Okay, I'll say I applied to, well, you know, our schools tell us to apply to like 150 or more, right? So I applied to 125 programs. I got 46 interviews and then I ranked 14. And I did not go to, I actually only went to 14 interviews. I canceled a lot during the season. And so I will say this also, it's really, really smart idea, to apply broadly and really, really broadly. I have no regrets, even though it was a lot of money to apply to that many programs because, so one, I didn't know what I was really looking for in a program. And this is kind of my biggest advice when I go back and talk to people who are applying is like, I was set on going to Rush in Chicago. I was set. I thought that's where I was supposed to be. I made my connections with everyone there. Like I was going to be good. And then like, you know, everything was set. They knew I was there. They were my number one. Like I knew that I would probably be able to go there. And then when I started interviewing, everything changed. Like my goals, what I wanted in a program, I started doing second looks. I started to realize like my goals are way different than what I thought they were. I was looking at the name, the big flashy lights, like Chicago, you know, this, that, but that's not what I wanted. So I found out what was important to me. What was important to me is to like be a really badass physician, like in the middle of nowhere, be able to like really do things like, so, you know, I found out that like they weren't doing certain, like their own procedures, some of their own procedures, or like their procedure numbers were not as high as the program I ended up at right now. And mine that I'm at right now is kind of a newer program. And so it was kind of like you know, it was scary. But when I met that group of interns, they seemed more like confident and procedurally skilled and just like they were kind of running this department and they were interns. So it was like mind blowing because I had not seen that anywhere else. And so everything just changed for me and I changed to my number one. And I would have never known about this place if I didn't apply broadly because I had no idea, you know? So I guess this is a lot of factors, right? Like there wasn't really something keeping me in Chicago like that much. So I had the opportunity to go wherever, you know, was best for me in terms of where I feel like my residency would be the best. So I had a luxury of that. I know a lot of people don't. A lot of people have kids and they need to stay somewhere. So, you know, you have to weigh all these things into alignment, but I will say apply as broadly as you can and then just like dive into the interview season and make your pros and cons lists and start creating the categories. Talk to people like us who have been through it because I swear I had no idea what I was looking for. Found it. Changed rank. I even switched my 2 and 3. Like, I know you shouldn't do this. Don't do this. But like, and I regretted it. But like a week before match or less, I switched 2 and 3. But luckily, I got my first, so I didn't have to like, you know, freak out about that. But I was freaking out for the next week about like, what if I get my number 2? I wish it was my number 3, like this, that. But anyways, so yeah, things change. Apply very broadly, and then you can cancel later. You can always cancel. I ended up canceling places I auditioned at because they were 4-year programs, and I was like, I love them, but like I'm not doing a 4-year program after I got all these interviews, you know. So
Yeah, I think I honestly applied to 125 as well, like exactly the same. If I had to do it again, knowing what I know now, I might have applied to a little less than that, but in the moment, I felt good that I was kind of safe, that I was getting interviews. I didn't have to worry about like panicking that I didn't apply to enough after I did. Like, it's expensive, but the peace of mind is worth it to me. It's worth it to me then and still is now. But yeah, I would say to also apply broadly, but also apply selectively as well. Meaning that if you know you don't want to go to a 4-year program, don't apply to a 4-year program. If you know you don't want to live like in the middle of nowhere, don't apply there. So just kind of go, I think it's like 300 something EM programs. So just go through I literally went through the list of all the programs and I was like, yeah, I could be here. No, I don't want to be here. And that helped me whittle my list down to like the 125 that I got. So I think there's definitely a benefit in applying broadly just for the peace of mind. You get, like she said, like you get interviews, then great. You can cancel if you don't want to go. If you get enough interviews,
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything with everybody had said. I think the biggest thing for me was not wanting to, the fear of not applying to enough programs, right? So yeah, applying to all these programs is expensive, but at the end of the day, like we've spent so much money going to med school and getting to where we are at that point. So I looked at it as I'm investing in my future. So I think I applied to 130 programs, got 42 interviews. So I went through all the interviews, and I mean, I ended up canceling quite a few. But that gave me some sort of reassurance where, okay, I know I'm at the spot where I can decide which ones I want to go to, which ones I don't want to go to. And kind of make your list. Make your list of things that are important to you. Kind of what everyone has said. Like, if you don't want to be in the middle of Alaska, wherever it is, like, don't apply to programs there. But like, you can use that to narrow down your list and kind of select from there once the interviews start rolling in.
Awesome. So you guys are saying make sure we apply broadly and obviously in areas that you'd want to be in, not in no man's land somewhere where you don't want to end up pretty much because you never know what might happen. Alrighty, so the next question has to do with research. So is research a must when you're applying EM? And if it is, how do you go about that? And did you guys have any research opportunities while you were in clinicals or throughout your clinical experience? How do you navigate that portion?
No, research is not like mandatory. I am very passionate about this because I hate research. I didn't do a single piece of research in medical school, and I did just fine. I don't think I think in other fields it like matters to do research, but in EM it's not really super huge unless maybe if you go to like a huge like academic center that's very like very strong, like top tier, but I don't think that most places require it or even really care about it.
Yeah, I think a good point with that too is like people in EM don't like you bullshitting. So it's like if you're gonna do a case report and publish it in Curious or something, which like I've done, great, but no one is that impressed. But we all know the game at this point. Like everyone's publishing this just to publish. If you have research experience that like you're passionate about and it's a niche, I think you can sell that as something you can offer to the program. Maybe like I worked in orthopedic surgery before I applied to med school, so I had a lot of ortho publications. I think it kind of worked against me in the cycle because I looked like I was applying ortho. So I think be strategic with what you put on your application in terms of what projects like you share with the ERAS application and like somehow tie it to EM if it's not EM related. But I think like the overall theme that I tried to stick to on my interviews is like if you do have a paper and maybe it's not that EM friendly, just be like, I learned how to publish. I learned how to kind of go through like retrospective or prospective study. It's something that I could see myself doing in residency, or like I actually hated it and I don't want to be involved in research at all. And like they'll probably respect the honesty. So we're not I don't think we're a field that requires like 80 publications a year to get an interview.
Yeah, I'm gonna say basically the same thing because I didn't really do much research. I put a case report on there that I did because I don't even think it was complete, but I wanted to have some stuff on there. I put one from like undergrad on there, but that was my real published thing. So I like threw that on there, but I didn't have a lot. I had presented some stuff at conference, like conferences. So I put that on there, but really like I didn't really get asked about that. And it was not. And I think I like the point of like, if this is your thing though, definitely like mention it and put it on there. Like I have someone in my program who's all into research, and she's like our research girl. And so she's got like hundreds of publication, and that's her thing. We all know that about her. She brought this to the program, and like, but most of us, yeah, it's not gonna like make or break you, I don't think. Just be honest.
Okay, that's definitely good to know, because I know there's a lot of pressure to try and get publications done, and you don't always have the opportunities. So that's definitely good to know. Thank you. Our next question involves red flags, and essentially, how would we navigate red flags on our application if we have any? Like, for example, leave of absence, failed class, failed step 1, things like that.
Yeah, so I would definitely say if you do have a quote unquote red flag on your application, it's something that you wanna explain, right? So let's say, for example, you have a fail on step 1, right? So personally, if that were me, I would explain as to what happened and then what you learned from that experience. Because the fact that you failed is not really what matters. I think what the program directors are looking for is how have you recovered from that situation? What have you learned from that situation? So if you have a red flag on your application, I would say talk about it, explain it, say what you've learned from it, and then where you are now or where you are because of it.
Okay.
I agree. And then also, I mean, if it's not like late in the cycle, I don't know if anyone is still working on some things, but like if you have a fail on step 1, really try to kill step 2. That way, you're outweighing like the numbers game or whatever it is that they're looking at. But I agree. I think going into the cycle, like as an IMG, is already full of pressure because you know that you kind of have a lot, like people are going to doubt you. You obviously want to mitigate that, but I think what matters more is like perseverance and grit, especially in EM, because it's like you're gonna be an intern and you're gonna miss lines, you're gonna like fuck up a code, you're gonna do things that you're not gonna be proud of or like are gonna fail. But being able to be like, okay, yeah, I will read up on it, I'm gonna try it again, and like just prove the perseverance. I think that's more of an important personality trait. I think like they probably don't want to hear excuses and just want to hear like, yeah, I messed up, it sucked, I reevaluated, I changed what I needed to change, and now like this is how I'm improving. So maybe just an action plan.
So definitely include it in ERAS is what you're saying.
I think if you don't include it, they're gonna bring it up. Like they're gonna find it somehow. So I would probably include it. I would downplay it. Like I would try to like not make it the biggest, part of your application. But probably include it. I think there's a section, right, where it's like difficulties or something that you get to explain, like financial or family or academic. I think that's probably a good place. I mean, I think it depends on what it is. Like if you fail a step, it's probably difficult to not address it. If it's something like less, like if it's on a rotation or something and you don't think that they're gonna see it as obviously, maybe that's a little bit different. But I think in terms of steps, they should probably be addressed. I don't know what everyone else thinks.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. If you failed like a class before, like in basic sciences or something, I wouldn't mention that maybe just because they probably can't see that. But if you put it on your ERAS and give a little explanation, and then when they bring you up the question during your interview, like what's the difficulty you faced, I would actually just hit that right on the head. Like, like I was going through some things and I didn't pass step. Like this is what I did to kind of make sure that never happens again. Like just like kind of show, you gotta really show them how you take accountability and that you created a plan to do it. I would say when you do that, I'm big on transparency too. So when you do that, like you're leaving no room for like questions. Is this person going to, be somebody that we can't teach to get better because they're just like this? And there are residents like that, and then when they don't do well, like there's no helping. So you need to show that you are teachable, that you will get better, that you recognize your problems and your whatever the word I'm thinking of, and you are gonna work on getting better. So I would just tackle it. And if they mention like, what is the weakness, they're kind of prompting you to like see if you will take that bait and talk about it. And also if you'll talk about it like a normal person, or if you'll sound really like, if you'll sound humble about it, or if you'll sound really cocky about it, like someone else, or, blame it on someone else or blame it on something else. So just kind of own it. This is a tough journey, and everybody, whether it be a failed step, like everybody has struggles through this. So just own it. That's your struggle. Just say, yep, this is what I did to fix it, though. It's never going to happen again. And they'll love that. They'll laugh with you. They'll be like, okay, cool. Like she knows how. And this journey does not get easier. Okay. So it's going to get hard, and you will have to create new action plans later on when something doesn't go right, or, you're not progressing like some other people. So, it kind of shows them that you're already prepared to do that kind of thing.
Awesome. I love the advice that you guys are giving, especially own it. Like this is your journey, right? So the next question kind of goes, I guess could have piggybacked with the research. Volunteer work. How important is volunteering, and how much is that do program directors look at volunteering when you're applying?
I think in terms of any extracurricular activity, like if you do something one time, like you go to a soup kitchen on a random Wednesday and you put that down there, they're literally going to be like, oh, great. So you went to a soup kitchen on one Wednesday in like your third year. Why is this on your application? So I feel like it has to be something that you're actually consistently involved with or doing, whether it's things like this, like you can be like, oh, I'm involved with AEM. I go to these panels. I, whatever, show up to conference. I am involved on in like virtual journal clubs or whatever. I think that would probably weigh more than like fake volunteer opportunities. So I think it's just being honest about what you're actually passionate about. If you're doing something that you think is really cool and it's not medical related, like one of my co-interns is a professional surfer. So he like teaches surfing classes and he does that as like volunteer work for kids. So I would think that's pretty cool as like a PD if I saw it, rather than some like medical thing that, you go to a hospital and hand out candy once a week. So I would say just do something genuine. And if it is genuine, put it on there, because they're going to ask you about it. And then it gets like, you just look dumb if you're trying to explain something that you don't know about or you faked. So I think it's important. It's always nice to have, but again, like most important to just like be genuine. And then I think in general, they like consistency over like one-time things. So if you've been doing something for 2 or 3 years, put it on your application versus the thing that you've been doing for a shorter period of time, even if you think it won't look as good, because it probably will.
Awesome. Does anyone want to add anything else?
Yeah, I'm gonna say, so this was an experience we had. So I got to take part in like doing interviews that last year. Yeah, for the newbies that just came in. And so I actually interviewed on one of the days. And it was really interesting to hear the feedback from my PD team on like what they thought about certain people. So I will just throw in that like we had someone who did what I thought was very cool volunteer work, because it's something that I would do, but it was like she like went to another country, try not to be specific at all here, but like some European country, and like did some type of thing. It was like a week or 2 or something, and you're helping like a local community. And we have a very strong of that community near us in Atlanta. And so actually my PD was super not impressed. He was actually kind of like completely turned off of this. And like I thought she sounded like pretty humble when she talked about it and all this, but he was like, like this is crazy. She, it's for the experience of going to that country. It's beautiful. And but then here there's so many opportunities to help those same people here, and not doing any of that. So I will say like Viv was saying, like huge, this is an extracurricular. So it's not necessary. Do things that you actually are passionate for. I was literally a dog trainer in college. And so I just been doing that on the side ever since, like here and there. And so that's my passion, is like, I used to take my dog to the senior homes and like walk him around there and things like that. Like I'm all big into animals. I was at a wildlife refuge. Like these are the things I like to hear about because I'm passionate about it. But even the like little mission trip I took, I didn't even bring that up because it was a one-time thing. I haven't done anything similar since. It's like not, so I really like that it's consistent. If you can it, and the rule of thumb is like every single thing on your application, can you talk about that comfortably? If the answer is no, then don't put it on there. So
Yeah, I would just want to add, be careful with the mission trips, because like my PD too, like it's mission trips are great if I think you go to a different country and like you teach people there, like faculty, professors, students, the medical staff, how to like maintain something after you leave. But us going places and like setting something up for 5 or 6 days and then leaving with like no resources, no people trained on how to do the same thing, like it's really not doing much. It's kind of just worsening like healthcare disparities. So, and if you do a mission trip and like you want to talk about it, but you notice things that you think were wrong and like maybe not ideal, you can spin it that way. Be like, hey, I actually did this mission trip, but it really showed me like how we shouldn't be doing things like this, and we should set up more sustainable care long term.
Okay, that's definitely really good to know. Wow, that we shouldn't, that it can be perceived that way.
Right.
it's very true, because my PD's big on that. He hates all of that. Like he said, the only thing he would want to set up is us going to another country to teach something, just like she was saying, go with a university and be able to teach their residents something that we can leave when we leave, you know? So, yeah.
Is there
I
any
would-
other must not, or like things that really give the wrong vibe?
I think like some people, like I went to this thing called Gap Medics when I was, I don't know, 20 or 21, and they did like, it was in Tanzania, but it was completely unethical. I mean, you had like 20-year-olds delivering babies, like it was just, things like that should not exist, and like they shouldn't be a thing. So I think like, you know, med students will go and they'll be like, yeah, I delivered babies in like Tanzania. And it's like, okay, sick, you shouldn't have been doing that. So I would say if it sounds wrong here, ethically, it is wrong across the globe. And like that standard should be set. So I don't know if there's true red flags, but if it just doesn't sit well with you and you're like, all right, I probably wouldn't be allowed to do it here, then don't like share it maybe if you were doing it somewhere else.
just run it by one of us, you know, just be like, hey, I did this, should I mention it? Or like, just talk to some of us.
Okay.
Dr. Hayden, do you have anything to add to this? Hi, everyone. I'm Shantae. I'm also one of the panelists. Me and Katie were just watching our other host here. I'm not a panelist, I'm a host, watching everyone. And I just wanted to know, Dr. Hayden, you've been pretty quiet. I just wanted to know your input, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I definitely agree. I wouldn't put anything like controversial in there, but definitely showcase things that are important to you. If you did something that you really were passionate about, that you can speak like in depth about, and you know, to sound convincing that you actually were interested in it and it wasn't just something you were doing just to check a box, then I think that's probably wise to put it on your application and be prepared to talk about it, because it probably will come up.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big things is if you're going to put something on your application, make sure you're prepared to talk about it. I think there's almost nothing worse than having something on your application. Program director or interviewer asks you about it, and you're fumbling to explain what's on your application. So I think that's a very, very, very important point. If it's on your application, make sure you are able to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. We were curious if any of you used or know anyone that used like the Match A resident application services or anything like that to help you through the ERAS process.
So I personally didn't use it, but I have friends that used it, and it was a little bit of mixed reviews on it. So what I used it for, I used the free ranking version that they had. So they had this. There's a part of it where they ask you a few questions about the programs that you interviewed at, and it ranks the program. So it gives the program a number between 1 to 10. And I used that to kind of put my programs in sort of an order, and kind of just to get an idea as to, okay, based on these questions, like where does this program fall, or where does this program fall, and then I can kind of use that just to kind of get my bearings. But overall, I don't think it was helpful personally. I mean, I don't know if the other panelists think differently, but personally for me, it wasn't something that was very helpful outside of the just arranging my programs in some sort of a rank order.
I agree. I think Metro Resident, one of the like flaws, I actually bought it. I didn't think it was that helpful because a lot of it is it's like self input. So if they like ask people that match, like, oh, what was your step score? How many interviews did you have? Where did you interview? So if people just don't like follow through with it, then their database is not like fully accurate. So I think it might a little bit guide you down the wrong path, and you might be like, oh, there's no IMG in that program. I'm not going to apply, or they have like a 2% chance of taking an IMG. And then other numbers that they give you is like, oh, you have an 100% chance of probably getting an interview at this program. So I think a good way to go about things is just going through your school's like recent matches and then looking at the programs that you're actually like interested in on the big list of ERAS and individually doing your research. Like there's a good Reddit sheet that goes around. They have like pros and cons and like really rip into programs. So I think that's like a better source than Metro Resident. But I think one thing that like if you want to invest in might be helpful is just like a personal statement edit. That's the most that I would do. I didn't do it, but I also feel like I know last year a lot of people were using Chat GPT for their personal statements. I feel like this year everyone's going to catch on to the fact that like that is not like just don't do it.
Yeah, I didn't use Master Resident either, but there are some free resources out there that can kind of give you similar information that you would get from Master Resident. So two that I kind of used one was Frida. It was from the American Medical Association. It's a free resource to use. I also used the EMRA residency kind of database. They have a lot of good information about how many IMGs are in the program, how many people they interview. So those are two good resources to look at. And definitely check out the spreadsheet on Reddit. It's like invaluable information that you kind of just get unfiltered, like opinions from people who interviewed at different places, from current residents. So you really get a lot of information from that. So I definitely check out the Excel spreadsheet whenever it becomes available.
And in general, just follow up with like vibes of people at the programs. I feel like that's such an invaluable resource, like just talking to the current residents and like getting their input. If you're like, are you happy? And they're like, yeah, but for the most part, like I'm happy. It's like, okay, red flag, so picking up on that, Frida and all these things are like good number cutoffs. But I think once you get past that is where it gets complicated and you're building your rank list and you're like, okay, well, I got my interviews, but how am I going to decide? Maybe your top two and your last two, but like the in between gets complicated. So go to the socials, talk to people. Also, one thing I just want to add is like, I don't know if you touched upon this earlier, but I think a lot of people get really pinned down by academic versus non-academic, trauma center versus not a trauma center, like procedures, all that stuff. You could be at a level 1 trauma center and see no trauma. You could be at a level like 3 trauma center and get more trauma than you could ever imagine. So like, don't have hard cutoffs. Talk to people and be like, okay, who comes down during your trauma? Does EM get head of the bed, or do you guys rotate sides for procedures? Like, do interns see critical patients, or do you just see them in your third year? Like, ask important questions like that rather than just trauma center, not trauma center, when you're trying to stratify like your pros and cons.
Thank you guys. Thank you. Thank you. That's a lot of information for us to take in and just, remember to incorporate that in this whole process. But thank you so much for all that input. So the last question that we have, and then we'll open it up to everyone else. Are there any additional like tips, tricks, anything else that we didn't have on our list of questions that you guys can add, or any suggestions for anyone applying this year, like myself applying next year? What else like is there that we need to, make sure that we incorporate in our application?
One of the things that I would say is, so not necessarily something to include in your application, but for me, if I could talk to myself last year, one of the things I would say is breathe. Like it's a lot. There's a lot going on. There's a lot coming. It's a high stress situation, but I think by my fifth or eighth interview, I realized, okay, all right, it's okay. I got this. And yes, I started getting more relaxed, and I mean, yeah, it's a high stress situation, but like the more you breathe and be yourself during the interviews, I think that goes a long way versus trying to be someone that you're not. As I kind of mentioned before, like these program directors, like they want to see who you are as a person. So if you be yourself and show them who you are during the interviews, that goes a long way. And I think that would go much further than you trying to be someone else, and trying to give off this fake persona. So I think that's one of the big things that I would say. Just take a breath, breathe, and you guys have made it this far. So the interview is just the icing on top of the cake.
I agree with that completely. That's like my only advice that I would have for this whole thing is just like have a little bit of faith that it's going to work out for you. Like stop listening to everybody else and their opinions and where their interviews are. Like all of it is just noise. Like you put your head down, you know what you're bringing to the table. And I think ultimately something that started making me like calm down is when you start viewing it in a different light and you're like, wait, why should like I be at that program? Not like why do I want them? Like why should they want me? And then vice versa. So it's like, okay, it's kind of like dating. You don't want to go on a date and fake your entire personality and be surprised when like you guys don't get along in a little bit of time, right? So it's just be authentic. And if the program doesn't like you because of personality differences, then like you don't want to be there anyway. So you'd rather know that post interview than be stuck in a program where you're miserable and unhappy. And then I think like following up is my other big thing. Follow up with people throughout the interview cycle. Don't be annoying, but one or two like follow-ups to either like the chiefs or residents or like eventually someone like the program coordinators have really big pull. Treat everyone with respect throughout like the entire process. Don't just think like, oh, I'm going to be nice to the PD and then not be nice to everybody else, because everyone talks. The residents have a lot of say. So be normal when you're hanging out with them too. And don't act like a resident like on shift. I feel like that's where it gets a little bit tricky because everyone's like, broing out and then someone like says something and you're like, oh, like it's too soon, So just be yourself and have fun with it.
Anyone else? Dr. Kanji or Dr. Thompson? Did I miss something?
Yeah, I will just add, like I said, like figure out what's important to you. That was my biggest takeaway from the season was like, and like really, really take steps to figure out what's important to you. Like put yourself in the environment. I'm really thankful that I went and visited the places I was considering ranking, because walking through the ER will also give you a feel, like sitting with the other residents where they sit on shift. Like it kind of shows you like, this is what I kind of wanted. And then you walk through different places, you're like, it's kind of quiet in here. I don't know if this feels to me like what I was expecting. So that's big. Also, just again, like let your personality shine through as much as possible. It's big in EM more than probably any other specialty. And when you're on interviews, do whatever you can to not be nervous before an interview, because they can sense it and they get kind of like, they're kind of, just be really like you're talking to someone, having conversations, because chances are they're going to be asking you questions about like, I took a trip right before that time. So they were like, oh, tell me about this trip. So most of our talks were like things like that, or tell me about this. And you want to just kind of go off in your little passion kind of rant, so interviews they kind of vary and they're kind of weird, but the actual interview with each person you're talking to is probably like between 15 and 30 minutes, I would say, per person. So then you end up talking to like maybe between 3 and 5 people. And then there's sometimes rooms where you break out with some residents and you talk to them, and ask all those important little nitty-gritty questions like, food and all those things when you get to the residence, like, you know, how much money do we get for food? Is there a lot of options for that? Like living, what's there fun to do? Like, but yeah, be yourself with the residents. And also I like that she said, like, be nice to the coordinators. Like they're going to be your, like, if you're on good terms with them, like things go a lot smoother during residency. And so just start off on a good note. They do have a lot of pull. The residents have a lot of pull. The PD's probably the only one who like doesn't really know you that much. So I would just really talk to everybody like they're the PD at that time, you know, and just be cool with all of them. And yeah, just be yourself, visit all the places you really like at the end and make your list.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, what everyone else said. One thing I did want to mention is signals. Definitely use all of your signals and use them wisely. My kind of train of thought when I was using my signals was to kind of look at programs that I like, was kind of a long shot, and then programs that were safe as well. Kind of just split it up that way and like applied or signaled those programs. And I ended up matching it one of the programs I signaled. So I think it's very important to kind of choose wisely where you use your signals. You know, do it within reason of what like your application and your stats are for like programs you're applying to. But try to do like a few reaches, and then some programs that are like more like your more like tailored to your application, and then maybe some that you really don't like, you have a good chance at, and but you know, not necessarily like a reach for you. And then I would say also with like the application process in terms of like getting interviews, if you haven't heard from a program after interview season has started and you're really interested in it, send them an email, like tell them, like, yo, I'm very interested in this program. These are the reasons I really like your program. I would love to have an interview. I got a few interviews doing just that. Like I had not heard back from the program. I emailed them and reached out, and they were very responsive, and they like sent me an interview invite a few days later. So definitely try that, but don't be annoying. Don't send like 3 emails saying, yo, can I get an interview? But definitely reach out if you're very interested in the program.
Okay, that's really good advice. Thank you for that. We had a couple of questions in the chat. Majority of them were answered. Thank you guys for that. But there was just one outstanding question, and someone was asking, how do we spread out the interviews?
So I think as they come in, this is the way I did it. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but last year there was a lot of different like platforms that you would get interviews on. You could get invites from Thalamus, you could get them from like actual ERAS, and then there was a couple other portals. So it got a little bit confusing. I would say start a Google Calendar for yourself, and anytime you accept an interview invite, put it on there so you have like one centralized area. And then in the beginning, like it's fine to accept interviews and fill up your calendar or fill up some dates. And then if you get second offers, then you can go ahead and cancel one, you know, as long as you're like a few weeks out, cancel the interview and replace that date. So just know what days you're free. Try to get on electives that will allow you to be like on interviews easily during that time. That way you're not like trying to get off a very difficult elective and only have 1 or 2 days. So I would say, yeah, just have do 2 months of the chillest virtual elective or whatever you can, and then use that as your interview time. There is no like other spacing out I think that you need to do. I would say if you have a program that you're really excited about, maybe like have a couple of interviews prior to that, just so you can get used to hearing yourself talk, and then go for the big one.
Yeah, so I will say it is kind of difficult to schedule interviews, especially if you're still doing clinical rotations. And it's just kind of a balancing act. You know, you're getting invites on all these different platforms. They come in at different times. Some programs have like only certain days and times that they interview. So you might have to reschedule an interview you already had like scheduled, because this other program only has times available at a certain time. So it's kind of just a juggling act, kind of readjusting your schedule and kind of scheduling as the interview invites come in. And I will say that I know some schools like mine at Ross, they were kind of sticklers about the rules, because technically you're not supposed to miss like a certain amount of days. But if you're, interviewing at like 20 places, it's kind of inevitable that that'll happen. So I would say just talk to your attendings and your residents you're working with. They're usually like super understanding, and just kind of do it under the radar and not like let your programs know or your school know.
Awesome. Unfortunately, it has come to the end of our seminar, but you guys have been amazing, and you have shared a lot of gems and pearls with us tonight. And for our panelists, if it's okay, if you don't mind dropping your contact information in the chat so that we can reach out to you if that's okay with any questions, helping us throughout this process, or just, just having us, being an ear for us to talk to, that would be great. So if you guys do not have any more questions, I want to thank our panelists for joining us tonight, and I want to thank you all for joining as well. And if that's it, that's it. Sorry.
Yes, thank you guys. Enjoy your night.
Good luck, everyone.
Thanks, Doc.
Thank you.
All right, okay, good luck.
Thanks again, guys.
No problem. And you guys can